Hi, good afternoon. I thank you for your coming on this day before holiday. I appreciate all of you being here. As you know, China is taking over the presidency of the Security Council this month. Today, we are honored to have Ambassador Liu Jieyi with us. He will brief you about the program work for this month, and after that, he will take your questions. Ambassador, please.
First of all, thank you so much for coming here. This indicates your support to the work of the Security Council. As I said last time when China was president and briefing the press about the work program, we attach great importance to the work of the press in the United Nations because I see you as part of the work of the Security Council because one very important aspect of the work of the Security Council is about messaging, to try to send the best message out for the different parties to come to the negotiation table or to seek appropriate solutions to their problems and to cope with the challenges that we see in different parts of the world. But the messaging of the Security Council will be more powerful and will have a wider reach if the media in the United Nations work with the Security Council with resolving these problems in mind and with the common future of the world in mind. So thank you very much for coming here and for your interest shown in the work of the Security Council and for your consistent support. The Council just adopted its program of work. I hope you received it this morning. As it stands, it will have about 30 meetings dealing with problems and issues in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America and Caribbean, and also in Europe. Specifically, the issues are Syria, Yemen, Iraq, Lebanon, South Sudan, DRC, Burundi, ECOWAS, Colombia, Haiti, and Cyprus. It will establish a new mission, of course. It's subject to the agreement of the Security Council. For Colombia, the second political mission in Colombia to monitor the implementation of the final agreements. And also it will extend, again, if the Council members agree, 2 mandates, one AMPHISIP, the other UNAMI. Now, on the question of Syria, there are 3 dimensions to be addressed by the Security Council. The first one, of course, is the political process. We are facing a crucial month in July for the political process as the Astana process meeting will begin tomorrow as scheduled, and after that there will be the Geneva process meeting. So the Council is following keenly the development in this respect, and certainly the Council, as the plan goes, will be briefed by Staffan de Mistura, the special representative of the Secretary General on the political process in Syria, and the Council members will take up the issue. The other 2 dimensions are the chemical and the humanitarian. These 2 aspects will also be under review in the Security Council. Now, on the question of Yemen, the Council will look at the situation and hopefully will work to persuade the different sides to the negotiation table to seek reconciliation, to seek to solve the problem through political means, and to abandon the notion that there is the possibility of a military solution. So that's also one of the issues to be dealt with by the Security Council. On South Sudan, the crucial thing is to achieve reconciliation among the different parties and also to have an effective dialogue for lasting solutions. The Council will continue to urge different sides back to dialogue, to cessation of whatever hostilities that still exist, and also to work out a lasting solution that's best for the country and for the people in South Sudan. Now, on Colombia, there will be the adoption of a resolution on the mandate of a second political mission, and hopefully the Council will adopt the resolution by consensus and to lend its political and other support to the Colombian government and people for the implementation of the agreement and put an end once and for all to the conflict in the country. And this will be important not only for the country but also for the region and even for the world. Now, on Cyprus, negotiations are ongoing, and the Council will look at the mandate of UNFICYP, and hopefully we'll see some positive progress in this respect, and hopefully we can use the Council's deliberations as a boost to more fruitful results in the dialogue. We will hold 2 open debates in July. The first one is proposed by China, but we are so glad that it has received the unanimous support from all the other Council members, and that is an open debate on enhancing African capacities in the areas of peace and security. We see that as a continuation of what the Bolivian presidency did in June to look at an open debate on the cooperation between Security Council and the AU. And we know that 2 other future presidents in August and September, respectively Egypt and Ethiopia, will probably also hold open debates on issues related to Africa, or cooperation between the Security Council and African Union and peacekeeping. So we see the 4 months as a period of generating more political momentum in the Security Council to help Africa enhance its capacity in areas of peace and security, because we, speaking for China, are of the view that we should always provide more help to Africa to seek solutions to African problems by African countries in African ways. So whatever focus the Security Council can bring to this issue of enhancing capacity building in Africa, it will serve a very good cause to not only peace and stability in Africa, but also peace operations in general throughout the world. So that is about the first open debate that we are holding. It will happen tentatively on the 18th. The dates may be adjusted. The second one is the long-standing issue of the Middle East, but it's really about the Palestinian issue. We are concerned about the situation there, and we certainly hope that the Security Council open debate will generate positive momentum to move the sides to negotiations and leading to the lasting solution of a 2-state solution through negotiations and through efforts on both sides. So that is an open debate on the 25th in July on the Middle East, with a focus on the Palestinian issue. Now a word in general about what China will do. Certainly will be objective and impartial in carrying out the duties of the president. Will try to be as transparent as the council members would like us to be, and we certainly will try to arrange the work of the Security Council in an efficient and effective way to make the best use of the time available, given the subject that the Council will have to deal with for the month of July. And for that purpose, as some of you may already know, we have agreed, the Council members, on a set of suggestions for the elements of briefing in meetings and consultations. And these suggestions will be provided to the briefers so that the hope of the Council members is that the briefing will be more focused on the latest developments, the key problems that we face, the implementation, the mandates, the challenges, what the Council is required to do to better carry out the mandate or to better address the situation. So this is a way of trying to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the work of the Council. So this is about how we will conduct the presidency of the Council for the month of July in general. And also, last but not least, I would like to meet with you as much as I can with the agreement of the Council members to speak on the Council's behalf. And I look forward to working very closely with you. And again, I wish that by the messages that you convey through your agencies, you help to maximize the constructive work of the Security Council in addressing different challenges throughout the world in this complex times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before we open the floor, can I remind our press that this is a press conference about Security Council, and please focus your questions on Council's work. The first question, please, Shirley.
Ambassador, congratulations on your promotion for the month of July. On behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, always good to have an opportunity to engage with you. Sherman Briceby, South African Broadcasting. I think it's appropriate that an African journalist gets to ask the first question, given the focus for this month, but it's not to do with Africa, I'm afraid. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about US-Sino relations, given the conversation between President Xi Jinping this weekend and President Trump. There are a number of issues, Taiwan, THAAD, the South China Sea, the DPRK, and how that broader relationship is impacting your work in the Security Council. And in addition to that, Ambassador, I think there's always a disconnect between what certain countries in the Council expect of China as it relates to the DPRK and what China can, from its domestic position, believes it can really achieve. Can you address this disconnect? What is it that China sees its role as being as it relates to the DPRK? Thank you.
Thank you. As Mr. Wang indicated, this is an event about the work of the Security Council. So I would like to say that it is important that the Council members, all 15 of them, work together on the very serious and challenging problems that we face today. And that certainly includes the P5, and that would include the United States and China. And I would say that on balance, if you look at most issues on the agenda of the Security Council, the Council have been able to achieve consensus and have been able to send out the same message to try to improve the situation on the ground and to try to create political and other conditions for the solution of the problems. But of course, the problems, most of the problems that the Council has been dealing with are complex problems. They are not prone to overnight solutions. But the fact that Council members can work together on most of the issues says a great deal about our times. As you may know, we see multilateralism as the most important task in the United Nations, and we do believe that every member has a duty to support multilateralism and also to have this sense of the entire international community share the same common future. the same destiny. So this is a larger picture. This is the larger reason that should override our sometimes deeply held differences in relation to the issues being dealt with in the Security Council in particular and in the United Nations in general. So I would say that China would like to closely cooperate and coordinate with all the other members of the Security Council to address the issues before the Council for the common good. And also, by the same token, we would like to work broadly with all the other members of the United Nations for issues that have a bearing on the common future of the entire international community. On the issue of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, you know that for us, three things are essential: denuclearization, peace and security, peace and stability, and also negotiations and dialogue to seek solutions. Currently, tension is high, and we certainly would like to see de-escalation of tension, because if tension only goes up and goes up only, then sooner or later it will get out of control, and the consequences would be disastrous. And I'm sure it is in our common interest to avoid anything like that. And for that purpose, given the current situation on the Korean Peninsula, China has proposed a package solution, namely suspension of nuclear and ballistic testing on the part of DPRK, and suspension of the military exercises on the part of the United States and the Republic of Korea. And also, that's only part of the package. And also, we are proposing to achieve denuclearization and a security mechanism for the Korean Peninsula at the same time. This is a feasible proposal because it accommodates all the major parts of concern in the region, and we do believe that once we embark on the road of negotiations along the lines of these proposals, and of course we are open-minded about other proposals, we will be able to calm things down and to seek a lasting solution to denuclearization and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. So we do hope that the other parties will be more forthcoming in accepting and supporting these proposals. Thank you.
Yeah. Joe, please.
Yes, thank you. Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. I want to ask about two agenda items. The first is your open debate on the 18th concerning peace and security in Africa. Will part of that debate encompass the recent initiative in the Security Council on counterterrorism and the G5 coordination, cooperation with the G5, and specifically the modality of funding? And will it also extend into the related area of development work there? And on the MINUSTA debate on the 19th, will this deal in part with the winding down of the peacekeeping operation and the use of any saved funds from that operation to support the efforts to alleviate the cholera epidemic, support for the community, perhaps individual victim and family and survivor support, etc.? Will it get into that level of granular detail? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the questions. On the open debate, I think various aspects will be looked at by different members during the open debate. I'm sure the G5, new G5 security mechanism will be a very important aspect of the capacity in dealing with peace and security situations in Africa. And actually, some members did indicate, some members, broad members of the General Assembly, did indicate that peace and development should be looked at together, because development is a fundamental basis for lasting peace, and also peace, of course, provides better conditions for development. And this is an open debate. Every member can bring issues, aspects evolving around the general theme of capacity building in peace and security to the open debate. And also, one very important background is the ongoing AU summit. So if the AU summit culminates in an outcome that is pertinent and important to the Security Council debate, and we, of course, will take that also into account and bring the relevant aspects and perspectives on board. So from the perspective of the President, everything that enhances the capacity in Africa to deal with peace and security issues can be brought on board. We are open-minded about the different aspects, but we do share the view that we need to take a holistic and systematic approach in looking at peace and security issues in Africa. Now, on Haiti, the nature of the mission will change in the light of the developments in Haiti. The peacekeeping part will be phased out, and the other parts will be strengthened. But as for the whether or not the funding that's saved or released will be used for cholera, I think that's an issue that's not really up to the Security Council. It's an issue up to the membership of the General Assembly. So there are the ways to provide more support to the people in Haiti in coping with this cholera problem are still being discussed in the General Assembly. So we certainly hope that there will be a good result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I had a question about China being the second largest financial contributor to the United Nations behind the United States. As I'm sure you've been watching, the Trump administration and Congress have proposed very serious cuts to the U.S. contributions to peacekeeping and to the regular budget. I wonder whether China, as the second largest contributor, is concerned that this could increase the amount you have to pay. Do you think this is fair? Is it something that you've been discussing either with the Americans or with other council members? And as a follow-up to your answer to Sherwin on the DPRK, two quick questions. One on dialogue. Is China doing anything concrete now to try and promote talks with the DPRK? And if so, are you having any success? And secondly, the United States has imposed its own sanctions, new sanctions. Do you see this as helping to increase pressure, or do you see this as a positive or a negative? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Now on the peacekeeping budget, the Fifth Committee has just adopted the peacekeeping budget. I think it is important that we use every dollar to where it is truly needed. And it is about how to make the peacekeeping operations more efficient and effective with the kind of resources that we have. What China has been supporting the United Nations peacekeeping operations over the years. As you said, we are the second largest contributor to the United Nations peace contributor and peacekeeping budget. And we made it a point of paying up our contributions very early in the year. And for different missions, we pay the money in time. This is at least our way of making sure that the problems faced by the peacekeeping operations in financial terms will be overcome to that extent. And we certainly hope that all the other countries will wholeheartedly support the UN peacekeeping operations, because we don't see any better alternative to multilateral efforts to actually make a difference in countries hosting or where the peacekeepers are deployed. And we certainly will continue to support the peacekeeping operations. And China, by the way, is the largest troop contributor among the P5 for peacekeeping. And we have, our president announced that China will set up a 8,000 strong standby peacekeeping force to be deployed by the United Nations, and we are making very good progress in that. So hopefully very soon that will be available to the United Nations. So that's about peacekeeping. Now on dialogue, to address the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, we have never stopped working on various parties so that dialogue and negotiations can take place to get us on the track of resolving the problems of denuclearization and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula, because we see that issue as one that's very, very serious. So much is at stake, and we cannot afford to wait for too long without dialogues taking place to see the situation having the possibility of worsening still. So we certainly hope that our efforts will culminate in actual dialogue and negotiations. But again, it takes all the interlocutors to agree to conduct dialogues. Now, on unilateral sanctions, we believe that as a collective measure, the Security Council can decide on measures to take with a view to remedying the situation or preventing any situation from getting worse. And that is the approach that we take. But even that approach, we don't see that applying sanctions is the only way or is an end in itself. It should be part and parcel of other efforts to try to seek solutions to the problems that the sanctions or the countries that the sanctions apply. So that is our view on sanctions. We have never, we have always been opposed to unilateral sanctions outside the framework of the United Nations. We do not see that as a right thing to do. Thank you.
Rhonda, please.
Thank you. My question goes back to Sherwin's question. And I appreciate that you said multilateralism is key, but I have a question with regard to the processes of the Security Council. The Charter claims there's a need to have every party to an issue being brought up invited so that they're there. DPRK was a party to the recent resolution, but that resolution appeared to have been negotiated outside of the council by two parties and then brought to the council, and they just approved it. And I wondered if you have any thoughts about that process, because there have been other processes that China was involved in where they did welcome a broad discussion and processes. So I would like if you could speak to that provision of the Charter. Thank you.
Right, yeah. Of course, every party that's relevant to the, is a party to the conflict, can be invited to attend the Security Council meetings. But then you have different situations. If the party is willing to come, of course, that's one aspect. The other aspect is that whether or not the Security Council agrees that a party is exactly a party as defined in the Charter of the United Nations. And sometimes you may encounter situations where the country that's a party to the conflict or issue being dealt with in the Security Council does not want to show up in the Security Council. So there are different situations that the Council should look at. But I believe that the most important thing is that the Security Council goes by Charter provisions and rise above national conditions in looking at these issues. Now, on the approach to working out specific draft Security Council resolutions, there are different ways in the Council of working out draft resolutions. There's a pen holder system. The pen holders will draft the draft resolution and work with countries that have shown more interest in working out draft resolutions. Then probably the draft will go to a larger setting to the members of the Council. There are different ways, and I believe the most important thing is that the draft will accommodate the widest possible perspectives from the Council members for the solution of the problems that the draft resolution is designed to resolve. I think the most important thing is to get the agreement of preferably all the agreement of all the Council members on the draft resolution. That's the only way of making the draft resolution work better. So I want to say that there are different ways of working out draft resolutions, and so that's simply what has been happening in the Council for many, many years. Yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. I'm Shi Xiaomeng from Xinhua News Agency, and I have two questions about the program. First is about Cyprus. As you just mentioned, the peace talks on Cyprus reunification is taking place in Switzerland. So does the UN Security Council have any plan to support that peace talks in your own ways? And if there's any, can you elaborate on that? And my second question is about Colombia. We've noticed that there is recent development in this country. The biggest rebel group has completed its handing over its weapons to the UN mission. So do you have any, maybe what are the next steps the UN Security Council will be taken towards this development, especially under your presidency? Thank you very much.
Yeah. On the first issue, I'm sure all the Council members would like to see positive results of the next round of negotiations, even though we do understand that the issues are complicated and they would require strenuous efforts and a great deal of work from different parties. But in case, we certainly hope that will be the case. In case there is a positive result of the negotiations, as president, of course, without consulting the council members. I cannot say for sure, but I'm sure the council members would look at how the Security Council will function to solidify the positive developments, progress, and to create better conditions from the perspective of the Security Council for the different parties to make further progress and achieve a lasting and appropriate solution to the issue. The program of work of the Security Council is flexible enough to accommodate the latest developments of the issues on the agenda of the Security Council. On Colombia, the purpose of the second mission, political mission, is to monitor the implementation of some parts of the final agreements, basically relating to the reincorporation of FARC into the political, economic, and social aspects of the country, security guarantees for the FARC. And the Security Council, as I said, will look at the adoption of the draft resolution is now scheduled on the 10th. So we certainly hope that the resolution will be adopted by consensus. If that's the case, a second political mission will be established. That's the Council's concrete support to the government and people of Colombia to open a new chapter in the country by putting a complete end to whatever that remains to the conflict that they have had for decades.
I know a lot of questions here. Can I ask you to limit your question to one?
CCTV.
Cecilia.
I'm from China Central Television. My question is about Korean Peninsula issues. As we know, China has made proposals for double suspension and a parallel track approach. It is reported that Russia is also drafting a roadmap on this matter. So I'm wondering, as a president of Security Council this month, do you think what role the Security Council can play in seeking political resolutions to the Korean Peninsula issues? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I would say that it is just as important that efforts outside the Council are being made to seek solutions of the issue through dialogue and negotiations. As I said, China put forward proposals for the denuclearization and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. And also the Russian Federation has put forward proposals very much in the same lines. And we would welcome other constructive proposals from the international community. I think the more countries that work together to achieve a negotiated solution, the better the chances will be that negotiations will take place. But we do hope that with the efforts of all the relevant sides, there will be more political will from the relevant sides to conduct negotiations on the issue of denuclearization and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.
Carol, AFD.
Ambassador, a few weeks ago, we heard the Secretary General sitting exactly where you are now talk about the fact that if there's a retreat from the United States on global affairs, on multilateralism, that other countries will fill the void, other countries will step in. So I'm wondering your thoughts on this. I see from what you said about peacekeeping that already China is playing a stronger role. Can we expect China to step in and play a stronger role at the United Nations, at the Security Council, on all of these issues? Thank you.
I would say that we certainly would hope that multilateralism will be the hallmark of every member of the United Nations. And we see this as a very important thing for our age. And we certainly hope that every member of the United Nations will live up to the requirements of resolving our problems together. I think one thing to mention here is that our president, when he made actually two very important speeches in Switzerland earlier this year, one in Davos and one in the UN headquarters in Geneva. He basically focused on globalization and global governance. Global governance that should be discussed by all the members of the international community, that should be built by all the members of the international community, and that should be shared by all the members of the international community. So I think what is required is for the world is this notion of we are all in it together, and the solution of the common challenges would require this togetherness, making efforts together. I certainly hope that this will be the spirit guiding all the members of the United Nations.
Matthew.
Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. Thanks a lot on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks for the briefing, and hopefully you'll do stakeouts, even after closed consultations, just to summarize, even if there's no press elements. Let us know what happened. I wanted to ask you on Burundi. You'd mentioned in your opening statements, there's a resolution to send police that was never really implemented, like the police never went. Is the purpose of the meeting on the 26th do you think to somehow address that, or will you be hearing from Envoy Michel Kafando now that he's gone to the country? And do you expect to hear from the Secretary General about Cyprus and Afghanistan? He recently visited both. Is there some provision to hear from him about these trips that he's made?
The Council will hear the briefing of Mr. Kafando and probably Mukaba. It's a occasion to look at the situation and latest developments in general in Burundi and try to play a constructive role in the Council. So it's going to be the current situation in Burundi in general. Thank you.
Okay, the last two questions. So I'm going to have some other engagement. Olga, please.
Thank you, Ambassador. Olga Denisova with RIA Novosti, Russian news agency. On Syria, you mentioned in the beginning that it would be an intense month of the negotiations going in Astana and in Geneva. Do you think it's important for the Security Council to support any outcome of the peaceful initiatives? And if so, will you push the Security Council to support it?
Mm-hmm. It is important for the Security Council to support whatever positive results from Astana and from Geneva, because the conflict has brought devastation to the country and to the region, and it has wider implications for the region and for the world. So the Council has been working for many years to try to promote the political dialogue and also to try to encourage the Syrian people in a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned political process to place the future of the country and people above the current considerations. So I believe that it is important for the Security Council to do its part to encourage whatever positive developments that may emerge. And we certainly hope that there will be positive developments from the Astana process and from the Geneva process. Actually, Mr. Stefan de Mistura will brief the Council on the 14th. That's right after the Geneva meeting as currently scheduled. Thank you.
Nabil, please.
Nabil Abi Saab, Al Hurra TV station. Mr. President, you met the Foreign Minister of Qatar last week here in New York. I would like to know what's your assessment on the situation and what was China's message to the Gulf parties on this regard. And on JIM, quick question. Russia always criticized JIM that its outcomes are not based on strong evidence. Do you share this view on JIM? Do you think JIM should improve its work and its credibility? Thank you.
Now, on the first issue, the best way would be the countries concerned work out a solution through dialogue and through consultations among themselves, because we don't see any other alternative to that. So whatever the countries can do to mend the fences and to get back to good neighborly relations, that would certainly be welcomed by China. Now, on the JIM, we have always stressed that it is important to base ourselves on facts that can stand the test of times and stand the test of history. So that's the only basis for making decisions in the Security Council. And I believe, as a matter of principle, the Council members agree that we should be factually accurate and correct in the deliberations in the Security Council on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anyway, we have to wrap up this press conference. Can you raise it later to us? We've tried to come back to you.
What guarantee can you give North Korea that if it denuclearizes, it won't end up like Libya, with the country obliterated and with the president murdered extrajudicially? Because they were obliterated during the first Korean War, and they live in terror of another blitzkrieg from the United States. So I think China has said that this is a U.S.-Korean issue to work out. But since you are speaking in favor of denuclearization, what guarantee can you give North Korea that it will not be destroyed if it gives its nuclear weapons?
Just now I said that China proposed a package proposal for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Actually, as I mentioned just now, and I will repeat a bit, part of the proposal is to achieve denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and also a peace mechanism. That would entail, as discussions have gone on for quite a while now, the signing of a peace treaty instead of in the place of the current armistice treaty. So we are not really looking at denuclearization and denuclearization only. We are also looking at peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. That has always been China's position. So China's position has three pillars: denuclearization, peace and stability, and dialogue and negotiations. So it's not that we are only looking at one aspect. We are looking at a package solution to ensure that at the end of the day, there's denuclearization and there's also a peace mechanism in place.
But how can you guarantee that? Because Gorbachev was told by James Baker that NATO would not expand 1 inch east of Berlin, and now Russia is surrounded by NATO. So what guarantee can you give that a peace treaty will be observed?
That's a question nobody on this earth can answer.
And that's why, I assume, wouldn't you think they wouldn't give up their nuclear weapons? Without a guarantee.
Well, I don't quite share the logic. Let me put it this way.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's keep in touch.